The massive chamber of the Galactic Council was filled with fear. Representatives from dozens of alien species sat in their floating seats, watching the giant screens that showed the terrible news. Red dots spread across the star maps like a deadly disease. Each red dot meant another world had fallen to the Vrak Collective. Ambassador Kethra stood at the center of the chamber. Her body was made of living crystal that normally glowed with soft blue light. Today that light flickered with terror. She was the voice of the Zaphiran people, and her people were dying. Honored members of the council, she began, her voice shaking. The situation has become desperate. The Vrak have taken 15 of our colony worlds in just 2 months. They do not take prisoners. They do not negotiate. They simply destroy everything in their path. The screens showed the aftermath of Vrak attacks. Beautiful cities turned to ash. Green worlds stripped bare of all life. Millions of beings reduced to nothing. The Zaphirians were a peaceful people who had never known war. Their crystal cities were works of art, not fortresses. Their ships carried scientists and traders, not soldiers. We have tried to fight them, Kethra continued. Our defense ships are no match for their war machines. They have weapons we do not understand, technology we cannot counter. They move like a plague through our space, taking world after world. From his floating platform, the Altarian representative spoke. His bird-like features showed worry. The Altarians had once been a proud warrior race, but even they feared the Vrak. What do you ask of us, Ambassador Kethra? We have already sent what ships we can spare. Not enough, Kethra replied. The Council's combined fleets have slowed them, but not stopped them. The Vrak adapt to our tactics. They learn from each battle. Soon they will reach our homeworld. 20 billion Zaphirians live there. They will all die unless we find a way to stop this. The Selenite Confederacy's representative floated forward. The ancient jellyfish-like being pulsed with concern. We have discussed this before. There is only one member of the Council who has not yet committed forces to this fight. All eyes turned to the human section of the chamber. Director Sarah Chen sat calmly in her simple chair. Unlike the floating platforms and energy fields used by other species, the humans preferred basic furniture. Many council members saw this as proof that humans were less advanced than other species. Chen was a middle-aged woman with gray hair and sharp eyes. She wore a simple blue uniform with no decorations. She had been Earth's representative to the council for 5 years. In that time, she had been quiet, polite, and helpful. The other species saw humans as good traders and peaceful explorers. They made excellent diplomats and scientists, but they seemed to have no military strength worth mentioning. Director Chen, the Selenite continued, your people have been part of this council for 50 years. You have benefited from our protection and trade. Now we ask for your help in return. Chen stood slowly. She looked at the star maps showing the Vrak advance. She looked at the images of destroyed worlds. Her face showed no emotion. What exactly are you asking of humanity? Kethra stepped forward. Her crystal form flickered brighter with hope. We know humans have ships. We have seen your trade vessels and exploration fleets. They are not warships, but they could help evacuate civilians. We do not ask you to fight the Vrak. We only ask for mercy. Help us save who we can. Other council members nodded. This seemed reasonable. Humans were known for their kindness. They often helped with disaster relief and refugee crises. Surely they would help now. The Andorian representative, a tall being with blue skin and white hair, added his voice. The humans are new to the galaxy compared to us. They have never experienced true war among the stars. Perhaps this is for the best. They can focus on saving lives while we handle the fighting. Chen listened to all of this without speaking. She walked to the center of the chamber and looked up at the star maps. The red dots of Vrak conquest were getting closer to Zaphirian space every day. At their current speed, they would reach the Zaphirian homeworld in 3 months. You speak of our inexperience with war, Chen said quietly. You say we are peaceful traders and explorers. You believe we have no military strength? She paused and looked around the chamber. You are both right and terribly wrong. The council members looked confused. Chen continued. It is true that humans prefer peace. For the past 200 years, we have chosen diplomacy over warfare. We have built trade networks instead of battle fleets. We have explored the galaxy with curiosity, not conquest. She gestured to the star maps. But you mistake our choice for weakness. The Altarian representative made a sound of frustration. Director Chen, this is not the time for philosophy. The Vrak will not be stopped by words. They understand only force. I agree, Chen replied. which is why Earth's response will not be words. She touched a small device on her wrist. The chamber's communication system activated. Chen's voice was broadcast to every human ship, station, and colony in the galaxy. This is Director Sarah Chen, speaking for Earth and all human settlements. The Galactic Council has requested our aid against the Vrak Collective. The Vrak have committed genocide against peaceful worlds. They have made war against our allies. This cannot be allowed to continue. She paused and her voice became harder. Effective immediately, War Protocol 7 is active. All diplomatic personnel are to return to human space. All trade agreements are suspended. All exploration missions are recalled. The council members looked at each other in confusion. War Protocol 7 meant nothing to them. They had never heard of such a thing. Chen continued her broadcast. To all council species listening to this message, you asked for our mercy. You asked us to help evacuate civilians. You believed we would send a few ships and a handful of soldiers. She looked directly at the star map showing the Vrak advance. You were wrong about what mercy means to humanity. The broadcast ended. Chen turned back to face the council. Earth has received your request for aid. We will respond accordingly. What does that mean? Kethra asked, her crystal form pulsing with confusion. How many ships will you send? How many humans will help with the evacuation? Chen gathered her papers and prepared to leave. Ambassador Kethra, you and your people will have our answer soon. I suggest you prepare your remaining worlds for evacuation. Not because the Vrak are coming, but because what happens next will not be safe for civilians. As Chen walked toward the exit, the Selenite representative called after her. Director Chen, you speak in riddles. The council needs clear answers. How will humanity help us? Chen stopped at the chamber's entrance. She turned back one last time. You will understand soon enough. The galaxy is about to learn something about humanity that we had hoped to keep hidden. For 2 centuries we have chosen to be explorers and traders. We have chosen peace, she paused. But we have never forgotten what we were before we made that choice. The chamber doors closed behind her, leaving the council members in confused silence. Above them, the star maps continued to show the Vrak advance. But now, scattered across the galaxy, human ships began to change course. Trade vessels that had been carrying cargo suddenly altered their routes. Exploration ships that had been studying distant stars turned back toward human space. And in the depths of space, automated beacons began broadcasting a simple message on frequencies that only humans used. The message was brief. War Protocol 7 active. Recall all assets. Prepare the legions. Earth remembers. The galaxy was about to discover that humanity's 200 years of peace had not made them weak. It had simply given them time to become something far more dangerous than any species could imagine. The Vrak Collective had awakened something that had been sleeping among the stars, hidden behind smiles and trade agreements. They had awakened the warriors of Earth. The news spread across Earth like wildfire. Every screen, every communication device, every public display showed the same message. War Protocol 7 was active. For most humans, this was the first time they had ever heard those words. But within hours, they began to understand what it meant. In orbit around Earth, massive structures that had been dark for decades suddenly blazed with light. The Luna shipyards, which the galaxy believed were used only for building trade vessels, began working at full capacity. But the ships emerging from their construction bays were nothing like the peaceful cargo haulers the rest of the galaxy knew. Commander Marcus Kane stood in the briefing room of the Terran Defense Corps headquarters. The room was deep underground in a facility that most humans did not even know existed. Around him sat 200 officers, all wearing uniforms that had been stored away for years. These were not the blue uniforms of Earth's diplomatic corps, or the gray outfits of the merchant marine. These were black uniforms with silver insignia that spoke of a different kind of service. Kane was a tall man with gray hair and scars on his hands that told of old battles. He had been waiting for this day for 20 years, hoping it would never come. But now that it had arrived, he was ready. Ladies and gentlemen, Kane began, you are here because you have been chosen to lead humanity's response to the Vrak threat. Most of you have served in peacekeeping operations or anti-piracy missions, but all of you have studied the old ways. All of you have prepared for this moment. Behind him, a massive holographic display showed the galaxy. Red indicators marked Vrak positions. Blue showed human colonies and trade routes. To anyone from the Galactic Council, it would look like humanity was hopelessly outnumbered and outgunned. The galaxy sees us as merchants and explorers, Kane continued. They think we are soft. They believe our ships are lightly armed cargo haulers and science vessels. They think our colonies are undefended trading posts. He smiled, and it was not a pleasant expression. They are about to learn how wrong they are. The display changed, showing detailed information about human military capabilities. The officers in the room were not surprised by what they saw, but anyone from another species would have been shocked. Every human trade ship carried hidden weapons in specially designed compartments. Cargo bays that appeared to hold simple goods could be converted into fighter launch bays in minutes. The peaceful exploration vessels that had mapped half the galaxy carried sensor arrays and communication equipment that were more advanced than the military systems of most other species. For 200 years, Kane explained, we have been building and preparing while pretending to be harmless. Every human colony has underground facilities that the galaxy has never seen. Every trade route has been mapped for military purposes. Every diplomatic mission has gathered intelligence. Captain Elena Vasquez raised her hand. She was one of the youngest officers in the room, but her record showed service in 3 different anti-pirate campaigns. Sir, what about the other council species? They are our allies. Some of them are fighting the Vrak right now. Kane nodded. The council species are indeed our allies. But they made a mistake when they asked for our mercy. They assumed we would respond like them, sending a small force to help with evacuations while leaving the real fighting to others. He touched a control, and the display showed new information. They do not understand what mercy means to humanity. The screen now showed the true scope of Earth's response. 7 full battle fleets were being assembled. Each fleet contained more ships than most species possessed in their entire military. But more than that, each fleet was equipped with technology that had been kept secret from the galaxy for centuries. Admiral Helena Voss entered the briefing room, and all the officers stood at attention. Voss was a legend in the Terran Defense Corps. She had commanded the fleet that ended the Proxima Rebellion. She had led the campaign against the Serpentis pirates. She was known throughout human space as the Iron Admiral, a leader who had never lost a battle. Be seated, Voss said, her voice carrying the authority of decades of command. She was a small woman with silver hair and eyes like steel. You all know why we are here. The Vrak Collective has made the mistake of threatening our allies. They have committed genocide against peaceful worlds. This cannot and will not be tolerated. She walked to the front of the room and looked at each officer in turn. The galaxy believes humans are peaceful because we choose to be peaceful. They think we lack the will to fight because we prefer to negotiate. They are about to discover that there is a vast difference between choosing peace and being incapable of war. The Admiral touched a control, and the display showed images of human military technology, weapons that could crack the crust of a planet, ships that could move faster than anything the galaxy had ever seen, fighters that could operate in ways that would be impossible for other species. Every human ship carries weapons designed from our military history, Voss explained. Our railguns are based on electromagnetic principles we have perfected over centuries. Our energy weapons use fusion technology that we developed for peaceful purposes, but can be weaponized instantly. Our armor and shields use materials that we discovered while mining asteroids for the galactic trade networks. Lieutenant Commander James Park, a specialist in alien psychology, asked, Admiral, what about the Vrak themselves? Our intelligence reports suggest they are unlike any enemy we have faced before. Voss smiled grimly. The Vrak are a hive mind collective. They think as one, act as one, and fight as one. This makes them very effective against species that fight as individuals or small groups, but they have never faced an enemy like humanity. The display changed to show tactical information about human military doctrine. We have studied every war in human history. We know the lessons of Alexander the Great and Julius Caesar. We understand the strategies of Sun Tzu and Napoleon Bonaparte. We have learned from every conflict, from ancient tribal warfare to modern space battles. Kane stepped forward again. The Vrak believe that being united in thought makes them strong. They cannot understand how individual humans can work together so effectively. They do not realize that our greatest strength comes not from thinking the same thoughts, but from thinking different thoughts toward the same goal. Around the galaxy, the transformation was already beginning. Human trade ships that had been carrying cargo to alien worlds suddenly jettisoned their outer hulls, revealing warships underneath. Exploration vessels that had been studying nebulae and star formations turned toward human space. Their sensor arrays now focused on military targets. The Luna shipyards worked day and night, assembling vessels from components that had been built over decades and stored in secret facilities. These were not the simple designs that other species expected from humanity. These were warships that incorporated the best technology from every species in the galaxy, improved by human engineering and designed for one purpose: to end wars quickly and decisively. On Earth itself, recruitment centers that had been closed for years opened their doors. But they were not seeking ordinary soldiers. They were calling for volunteers who had studied the old ways, who had trained in secret, who had prepared for the day when humanity might have to fight again. The response was overwhelming. Millions of humans volunteered within the first week. They came from every colony, every trade ship, every exploration vessel. They were merchants who had studied military tactics in their spare time. They were scientists who had designed weapons in secret. They were diplomats who had gathered intelligence while negotiating trade agreements. Admiral Voss stood before the assembled fleet commanders as their ships prepared to depart. The vessels around her were magnificent and terrible. They bore names that honored Earth's military history: Normandy, Stalingrad, Thermopylae, Gettysburg. Each name represented a moment when humans had chosen to fight against impossible odds. "The galaxy asked for our mercy," Voss said over the fleet communication channels. "They wanted us to send a few ships to evacuate civilians while they handled the fighting. They believed we would act like them, cautious, limited, afraid to commit our full strength." She paused, looking out at the assembled fleet. Thousands of ships stretched across space, each one a masterpiece of human engineering and military design. They were wrong. When humanity shows mercy, we do not send a few ships to rescue the survivors. We send everything we have to make sure there are no more victims. We do not evacuate the innocent. We eliminate the threat. The fleet began to move, departing human space for the first time in 2 centuries with full military intent. As they jumped to hyperspace, their destination was clear. The Vrak Collective would learn what happened when they threatened humanity's allies. Behind them, Earth continued its preparations. The galaxy was about to discover that humanity's 200 years of peace had been spent getting ready for war. The Kepler 442 system had been peaceful for over a century. 3 gas giants orbited a stable yellow star, their moons home to mining operations that supplied rare metals to half the galaxy. The system's location made it a perfect waypoint for trade routes, and dozens of ships passed through it every day. Today, it would become the place where the galaxy learned the truth about humanity. Hive Mind designation, 77 Alpha commanded the Vrak scouting force that entered the system. The designation meant he was the 7th sub-mind of the 7th primary consciousness of the Alpha attack group. Like all Vrak, he existed as part of a collective intelligence that shared thoughts and memories across their entire species. 77 Alpha's ships were ugly and functional. They looked like giant insects made of metal and ceramic, with weapon ports that resembled mandibles and sensor arrays that moved like compound eyes. His force consisted of 50 ships ranging from small fighters to heavy cruisers. It was more than enough to destroy any resistance in this quiet system. The Vrak had been expanding their territory for decades, consuming everything in their path. They did not negotiate or trade. They simply took what they wanted and destroyed what they did not need. It was efficient and effective, and no species had been able to stop them for long. As 77 Alpha's ships moved deeper into the system, their sensors detected 3 vessels near the 4th planet's largest moon. The ships appeared to be human, according to the identification signals they were broadcasting. One was clearly a cargo vessel, massive and slow. Another seemed to be a small escort ship, probably lightly armed. The third looked like a passenger transport. 77 Alpha felt satisfaction flow through the collective consciousness. Humans were known to be weak and peaceful. They would probably try to surrender or negotiate. If they ran, his ships would easily catch them. Either way, it would be an easy victory. Unknown vessels, 77 Alpha broadcast on standard communication frequencies. You are in territory claimed by the Vrak Collective. Surrender your ships and prepare to be processed. The response came from the cargo ship, which identified itself as the Prometheus. The voice was calm and human, with a slight accent that the Vrak translators could not identify. "This is Captain Sarah Mitchell of the merchant vessel," Prometheus. We are conducting legal trade operations in this system. We do not recognize VRAC territorial claims here. 7-7 Alpha shared the amusement of the collective. These humans were either very brave or very stupid. Captain Mitchell, you will surrender immediately or be destroyed. This is your only warning. Negative, came the reply. We decline your generous offer. The VRAC commander ordered his ships to attack. What happened next would be discussed in hushed tones throughout the galaxy for decades to come. The Prometheus seemed to explode, but not from weapons fire. Instead, its outer hull separated into dozens of pieces that flew away in all directions. Underneath was revealed a ship that looked nothing like a cargo hauler. It was sleek and deadly, bristling with weapon ports and sensor arrays. The humans had somehow hidden a warship inside what appeared to be a merchant vessel, but the Prometheus was not alone in its transformation. The small escort ship, the Defiant, suddenly deployed what seemed like an impossible number of fighter craft from hidden bays. Each fighter was tiny compared to VRAC ships, but they moved with a speed and agility that 7-7 Alpha had never seen before. The passenger transport, the Valkyrie, dropped all pretense of being a civilian vessel. Its hull reconfigured itself in seconds, revealing massive weapon systems that made even VRAC heavy cruisers look small. This was not a transport ship. This was a dreadnought designed for one purpose: to destroy everything that opposed it. 7-7 Alpha tried to process what he was seeing. The collective consciousness reeled as information flowed back from all 50 ships. The humans had been hiding their true nature. Every ship the VRAC had ever encountered from this species had been a lie. The human attack came with precision that spoke of centuries of military experience. The fighters from the Defiant moved in perfect formation, their weapons targeting the weak points in VRAC ship design with surgical accuracy. They seemed to know exactly where to hit each vessel for maximum damage. The Prometheus opened fire with weapons that defied VRAC understanding of physics. Beams of energy that burned hotter than stellar cores sliced through VRAC armor like it was paper. Projectiles moving at impossible speeds punched holes clean through entire ships. But it was the Valkyrie that truly shocked 7-7 Alpha. The massive dreadnought's main guns fired once and an entire squadron of VRAC ships simply ceased to exist. The weapon created an energy pulse that tore apart molecular bonds, reducing the target vessels to their component atoms. Impossible, 7-7 Alpha transmitted to his remaining ships. Humans are peaceful traders. They do not possess military technology. Captain Mitchell's voice came over the communication channels again, and now 7-7 Alpha could hear something in her tone that chilled him. It was the voice of someone who had done this before many times. You made 2 mistakes, Mitchell said calmly, even as her ships continued to systematically destroy the VRAC force. First, you assumed that because we choose peace, we are incapable of war. Second, you threatened our allies. The battle, if it could even be called that, lasted less than 10 minutes. The VRAC ships found themselves outgunned, outmaneuvered, and completely outclassed by human technology and tactics. It was not a fight between equals. It was a demonstration of what happened when a peaceful species was forced to remember why they had chosen peace in the first place. 7-7 Alpha watched his flagship systems fail one by one as human weapons tore through his defenses. Around him, the collective consciousness of his force was screaming in panic and disbelief. This was not how the scenario was supposed to unfold. Humans were supposed to be easy prey. How? He transmitted desperately as his ship's hull began to breach. How do you possess such weapons? Such ships? The galaxy knows you as merchants and explorers. Captain Mitchell's response would haunt 7-7 Alpha for the rest of his existence. We are merchants and explorers. But before we were those things, we were something else. We were warriors. We have never forgotten how to be warriors. The Valkyrie's weapons locked onto 7-7 Alpha's flagship, but instead of destroying it, they disabled its engines and weapons systems. The humans were taking a prisoner. You will return to your collective, Mitchell continued. You will tell them what you have seen here. You will inform them that humanity is no longer hidden behind the mask of peaceful trade. The galaxy is about to see what we are capable of when we stop pretending to be harmless. 7-7 Alpha's damaged ship was pushed out of the system by a tractor beam from the Defiant. As it limped toward VRAC space, its sensors continued to observe the human ships. What they saw made the collective consciousness recoil in horror. The human vessels were not unique prototypes. They were production models, mass-produced designs that could be found throughout human space. If 3 ships could destroy 50 wrack vessels this easily, what could an entire human fleet accomplish? The report that reached the main wrack armada was initially dismissed as impossible. Human merchants with hidden warships, fighter craft that could outmaneuver wrack interceptors, weapons that could destroy multiple ships with a single shot? The collective consciousness could not accept such information. But as more reports came in from other encounters with human ships, the truth became undeniable. Humanity had been lying to the galaxy for 2 centuries. They were not peaceful traders who happened to own a few lightly armed cargo ships. They were a military power that had chosen to hide behind the facade of commerce and exploration. News of the Kepler 442 encounter spread throughout the galaxy within hours. The Galactic Council received reports from their own intelligence networks, confirming what seemed impossible. The humans who had sat quietly in their chambers for 50 years, offering helpful advice and peaceful solutions, possessed military technology that surpassed anything the Council had ever seen. Ambassador Kethra stood in her private chambers, watching the intelligence reports with growing amazement. The crystal beings had asked humanity for mercy, expecting them to send a few lightly armed ships to help with evacuations. Instead, the humans had revealed themselves to be the most dangerous military force in the galaxy. They were never weak, she whispered to herself, her crystalline form pulsing with a mixture of relief and terror. They were never peaceful because they could not fight. They were peaceful because they chose not to show us what they could do. The Galactic Council called an emergency session, but Director Chen did not attend. Her chair sat empty while representatives from dozens of species tried to understand what was happening. The humans they thought they knew had never existed. In their place was something far more powerful and far more frightening. In the depths of space, 77 Alpha's damaged ship continued its journey back to the main wrack fleet. The collective consciousness wrestled with the implications of what they had discovered. They had awakened something that had been sleeping among the stars, hidden behind smiles and trade agreements. They had awakened the warriors of Earth. The Zaphiran home system had never seen so many ships in one place. For 1,000 years it had been a peaceful center of trade and culture, where crystal beings built cities that sang with harmonic frequencies and created art from living light. Now it was transformed into the greatest fortress the galaxy had ever witnessed. Prime Consciousness designation Alpha Prime commanded the main wrack armada from the bridge of the hive ship Eternal Hunger. The massive vessel was over 3 kilometers long, its biomechanical hull pulsing with the collective thoughts of 1,000,000 wrack minds. Around it, 999 other ships formed attack formations that had conquered dozens of star systems. Alpha Prime was the supreme military consciousness of the Wrack Collective, a being that existed as pure thought distributed across thousands of individual bodies. It had directed the conquest of entire civilizations and had never known defeat. The report from 77 Alphas, defeated force had been disturbing, but Alpha Prime refused to believe that a single encounter represented humanity's true capabilities. The humans surprised a small scouting force, Alpha Prime declared to the collective consciousness. They used deception and hidden weapons to achieve a temporary victory. Against our main fleet, such tricks will prove worthless. As the Wrack Armada dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the Zaphiran system, Alpha Prime prepared to deliver the final blow against the crystal beings and their pathetic human allies. What it saw instead made the collective consciousness pause in confusion and growing alarm. The space between planets was filled with ships. Not dozens, not hundreds, thousands. Human vessels of every size and configuration floated in perfect military formations that spoke of centuries of tactical evolution. Some were clearly the hidden warships that had been disguised as merchant vessels. Others were designs that no alien species had ever seen before, ships that looked like they had been built for one purpose: war. But it was not just the number of ships that shocked Alpha Prime. It was the formations themselves. The humans had arranged their fleet in patterns that demonstrated a deep understanding of three-dimensional space combat. Every ship was positioned to provide overlapping fields of fire. Every squadron was placed to support the others. It was military doctrine perfected over millennia of conflict. Admiral Helena Voss stood on the bridge of her flagship, the dreadnought Armageddon. Around her, holographic displays showed the positions of every ship in both fleets. The Vrak armada was impressive by galactic standards, but Voss had studied the reports from Kepler 442. She knew what they were facing. "Admiral," reported Captain Torres from the sensor station, "the Vrak fleet is moving into attack formation. 1,000 ships centered around what appears to be their command vessel." Voss nodded. The Eternal Hunger was easy to identify. Its biomechanical design stood out among the other Vrak ships like a queen among worker ants. "Open a channel to all frequencies," she ordered. The communication systems activated, broadcasting Voss's words to every ship in both fleets and to monitoring stations throughout the galaxy. When she spoke, her voice carried the authority of someone who had never lost a battle. "I am Admiral Helena Voss of the Terran Defense Corps. You have made war upon our allies. You have committed genocide against peaceful peoples. You have forced us to reveal what we had hoped to keep hidden." She paused, looking directly at the tactical display showing the Vrak fleet. "You will surrender immediately and submit to judgment for your crimes, or face the consequences of awakening humanity's wrath." Alpha Prime's response came quickly, broadcast on the same frequencies with the arrogance typical of the collective consciousness. "I am the prime consciousness of the Vrak war fleet. You are few. We are many. You are soft. We are strong. We will devour your allies and then come for your worlds. Your deceptions worked against a scouting force, but we are the true might of the collective." Voss's reply was simple and delivered with the calm certainty of someone who had already decided the outcome. "Then learn why humans don't start wars. We finish them." The battle began with the Vrak doing what they had always done, a massive frontal assault designed to overwhelm their enemies through sheer numbers and firepower. 1,000 ships moved forward in a formation that had broken the defenses of every species they had encountered. They had never encountered humanity. The human response came in waves, each one demonstrating a different aspect of their military evolution. The first wave was the fighters, launched from hidden bays and ships that the galaxy had thought were civilian vessels. These small craft moved like extensions of their pilots' wills, dancing between Vrak fire with an agility that seemed to defy physics. But it was not just their movement that shocked the Vrak. It was their weapons. Each human fighter carried missiles that could track targets through hyperspace jumps. Their energy cannons fired beams that could penetrate shields thought to be impenetrable. Most terrifying of all, they seemed to know exactly where to hit each Vrak ship for maximum damage. The second wave was the destroyers and cruisers, ships that had been disguised as cargo haulers and exploration vessels. Their weapons opened fire with devastating effect. Railguns that accelerated projectiles to near light speed punched through Vrak armor like it was made of paper. Energy weapons that harnessed the power of artificial stars burned through entire squadrons of enemy ships. The third wave was the dreadnoughts, massive ships that the galaxy had never suspected humanity possessed. These were vessels designed not just to win battles but to end wars. Their main guns could crack the crust of a planet. Their shields could withstand the combined fire of entire fleets. Alpha Prime watched in growing horror as the collective consciousness began to fragment under the weight of what it was experiencing. The Vrak had built their entire military doctrine around overwhelming enemies with superior numbers and technology. But the humans were demonstrating both superior technology and superior tactics. How? Alpha Prime transmitted desperately as its ships died around it. "How do you possess such weapons? Such knowledge of warfare?" Admiral Voss's response came over the communication channels, her voice cutting through the chaos of battle. "We are the children of warriors, Prime Consciousness. We are the species that climbed from caves to stars through will and warfare. We have conquered every environment our world could offer, then reached for others. The human fleet moved with a coordination that spoke of centuries of military tradition. They used tactics that the Vrak could not counter, because they had never encountered an enemy that fought this way. The humans did not simply try to destroy their opponents. They systematically dismantled them, taking apart the Vrak formations like a surgeon removing a cancer. We are the descendants of Alexander and Caesar." Voss continued as her ships pressed their attack. "We carry the lessons of Sun Tzu and Napoleon. We remember every battle our species has ever fought, from tribal conflicts to the conquest of our solar system. The Vrak fleet, built for overwhelming weaker opponents, found itself completely outclassed. Their biomechanical ships, which had seemed so alien and terrifying to other species, were revealed to be inferior to human engineering. Their hive mind coordination, which had given them an advantage against individualistic species, proved useless against humans who combined individual creativity with collective purpose. Alpha Prime's flagship shuddered as human weapons found their mark. The collective consciousness was screaming now, a million minds crying out in panic as they realized they were facing something beyond their understanding. These were not the peaceful traders they had expected to find. These were the heirs to every warrior tradition that had ever existed on Earth. Impossible, Alpha Prime transmitted as its ship's defenses failed. You are merchants, explorers, you do not possess military traditions? We possess all military traditions, Voss replied. We are the synthesis of every way of war that has ever existed. We have studied every conflict, learned from every defeat, perfected every victory. The battle was not even close. What the Vrak had intended as a final assault became a rout, then a massacre, then a complete surrender. Their ships, designed to inspire terror in peaceful species, were systematically destroyed by human forces that fought with the accumulated wisdom of 10,000 years of warfare. When the firing stopped, less than 100 Vrak ships remained out of the original 1,000. They floated dead in space, their weapons destroyed, their engines disabled, their crews alive only because the humans had chosen mercy over vengeance. Alpha Prime's flagship was among the survivors, kept alive for a specific purpose. Admiral Voss opened a communication channel to the Vrak commander, her voice now carrying a note of pity. Prime consciousness, you have witnessed what happens when humanity stops pretending to be harmless. Your collective chose to make war on our allies. You chose to commit genocide against peaceful peoples. You chose to force us to remember what we are capable of. The silence from the Vrak ships was profound. The collective consciousness had been shattered by defeat, its confidence broken by encountering an enemy it could not understand or overcome. You will surrender unconditionally, Voss continued. You will submit to judgment for your crimes. You will learn to coexist with other species or face extinction. His is the mercy that humanity offers, the chance to choose a different path. In the depths of space, the silence in the Galactic Council chambers was complete. For the first time in the Council's 1,000-year history, not a single representative spoke. They all stared at the holographic displays showing the aftermath of the battle in the Zaphiran system. The debris field where the Vrak Armada had been destroyed stretched across millions of kilometers of space. Ambassador Kethra stood at her usual position, her crystalline form now pulsing with a steady, peaceful blue light. Her people were safe. 20 billion Zaphirians lived because humanity had chosen to act. But the cost of that salvation was the complete transformation of how every species in the galaxy viewed their human allies. The displays showed the human fleet as it completed its victory. Thousands of ships that had been hidden throughout the galaxy for centuries now moved openly through space. Their true nature was revealed for all to see. These were not merchant vessels or exploration ships. These were the instruments of the most advanced military force the galaxy had ever known. Director Sarah Chen entered the chamber for the first time since the crisis began. She walked calmly to her simple chair, ignoring the stares of every other representative. When she sat down, the silence continued for several more minutes. Finally, the Selenite Confederacy's representative found the courage to speak. Director Chen, the ancient being, pulsed. We had no idea. In 50 years of cooperation, we never suspected that humanity possessed such capabilities. Chen looked around the chamber, meeting the eyes of representatives who had thought they knew her species. We never lied to you, she said quietly. We told you we were merchants and explorers. We are. We told you we preferred peace to war. We do. We simply never mentioned what we were capable of when peace was no longer an option. The Altarian representative, his bird-like features showing confusion and fear, spoke next. But your ships, your weapons, how did you hide such technology from us for so long? We didn't hide it, Chen replied. You saw what you expected to see. When we showed you a cargo vessel, you assumed it was only a cargo vessel. When we demonstrated peaceful intentions, you assumed we were incapable of warfare. You made the mistake of believing that choosing peace meant being weak. On the displays, images showed human boarding parties taking control of the surviving Vrak ships. The insectoid beings offered no resistance. Their collective consciousness had been shattered by defeat, their certainty of superiority replaced by the knowledge that they had encountered something beyond their understanding. Admiral Voss appeared on the main communication screen, broadcasting from the bridge of her flagship. Behind her, the crew worked efficiently to coordinate the surrender of the Vrak fleet. Her voice was calm and professional as she addressed the Council. Members of the Galactic Council, Voss began, the Vrak Collective has surrendered unconditionally. Their remaining ships and personnel are under human custody. We will be conducting a full investigation into their war crimes and determining appropriate consequences for their actions. The Andorian representative, his blue skin pale with shock, asked Admiral Voss what will happen to the Vrak. Will they be eliminated? Voss's expression softened slightly. The Vrak will be given the same choice we offer all species. Learn to coexist peacefully with others or face exile to the Outer Rim. Their collective consciousness will be restructured to remove the aggressive impulses that drove them to genocide. They will be monitored for several generations to ensure compliance. She paused, looking directly at the Council representatives. This is what mercy means to humanity. We do not simply evacuate the survivors of genocide. We eliminate the conditions that create genocide in the first place. The implications of her words settled over the chamber like a heavy weight. Every species present began to recalculate their relationship with humanity. Trade agreements that had seemed favorable now looked like the generous gifts of a superior power. Diplomatic negotiations that had been conducted as equals now appeared to have been humanity humoring lesser civilizations. Chen stood and walked to the center of the chamber. I want to address the concerns I can see in all of your faces, she said. You are wondering if humanity has been manipulating you. You are afraid that we see ourselves as your superiors. You are questioning every interaction you have ever had with our species. She gestured to the displays showing the human fleet. The truth is simpler and more complex than you imagine. We are exactly what we have always claimed to be. A species that prefers peace to war, trade to conquest, exploration to domination. But we are also the children of warriors. The chamber remained silent as Chen continued. Every human child learns the history of our species. We know about the wars that nearly destroyed our world. We study the conflicts that taught us the true cost of violence. We understand better than any other species what happens when peaceful peoples are not protected from those who choose aggression. She looked at each representative in turn. For 2 centuries, we have chosen to be merchants and explorers because we have the strength to make that choice. We have built trade networks instead of battle fleets because we are secure enough to do so. We have pursued knowledge instead of conquest because we are confident enough in our abilities to defend ourselves. The Zaphiran ambassador stepped forward, her crystal form pulsing with gratitude and something else, a new understanding of what humanity truly represented. Director Chen, Kethra said, My people owe you a debt that can never be repaid. But I must ask, why? Why did you reveal so much of your true nature to save us? You could have sent a small force as we requested. You could have maintained your peaceful facade. Chen smiled, and for the first time since the crisis began, her expression showed genuine warmth. Because that is not what mercy means to humanity, Ambassador. When you asked for our mercy, you were asking us to be true to our nature. And our nature is to protect those who cannot protect themselves. She turned to address the entire council. We revealed our military capabilities because hiding them while our allies died would have been a betrayal of everything we claimed to believe. We showed you what we are capable of because the alternative was watching genocide proceed, while we pretended to be helpless. Admiral Voss's voice came over the communication system again. The Vrak situation has been resolved. All surviving enemy personnel are in custody. The threat to Zaphiran space has been eliminated. She paused. Human forces will remain in the area for 6 months to ensure stability, then return to normal operations. The casual way she announced the deployment of humanity's vast military force drove home the reality of the new galactic situation. Human normal operations now included openly deploying fleets that could defeat any other military force in known space. Chen returned to her chair and sat down. Members of the council, she said, I want to be very clear about humanity's intentions going forward. We have no desire to conquer or control other species. We have no interest in establishing an empire or claiming territory. We want exactly what we have always wanted: peaceful coexistence, mutual prosperity, and the freedom to explore the galaxy. She looked at the displays showing human ships throughout the galaxy. But the galaxy has now seen what happens when those things are threatened, when peaceful species are attacked, When genocide is committed, when aggression is chosen over diplomacy, humanity will respond. We will respond with everything we have, and we will not stop until the threat is eliminated. The Selenite representative pulsed nervously. Director Chen, how do we proceed from here? How do we maintain our alliance with humanity, knowing what we now know? The same way you always have, Chen replied. With honesty, respect, and mutual benefit. Nothing has changed about humanity's commitment to peace and cooperation. The only thing that has changed is that you now understand the strength that commitment is built upon. She stood to leave, then turned back one final time. The galaxy asked for our mercy when the Vrak threatened peaceful worlds. You expected us to send a few ships to evacuate civilians while leaving the fighting to others. You thought mercy meant accepting the minimum level of response. Chen walked toward the chamber's exit, her footsteps echoing in the silent room. You were wrong about what mercy means to humanity. When we show mercy, we do not send just enough force to rescue the survivors. We send enough force to ensure there are no more victims. The doors closed behind her, leaving the council representatives alone with their thoughts and fears. On the displays, human ships continued their patrols through space that was now undeniably under their protection. The galaxy had asked for mercy and received something far more valuable: justice. In the months that followed, the balance of galactic power shifted quietly but completely. Trade agreements were renegotiated with a new understanding of humanity's true position. Defense pacts were offered to species who had previously ignored human diplomatic overtures. The Galactic Council itself was restructured to reflect the reality that one species possessed the ability to enforce peace throughout known space. The Vrak Collective was relocated to a distant system under human supervision. Their aggressive instincts were carefully modified through a combination of advanced psychology,